Humans are very good at making a point. I can neither understate or overstate this observation. I was there, on Earth, when they demonstrated their absolute mastery of this skill. I have never forgotten that day, nor do I think I ever will. At the very least, I would prefer not to forget. I was much younger then, a proud commander in the Ara fleet. I had sharpened my beak at Tavisk and Fakin against the Graph. My talons were honed at Majet Station, where we had snatched victory from the Graph in the face of overwhelming firepower. Our war had raged for over 20 solar rotations, and that is when the Graph and the Ara made their most atrocious mistake. Our war spilled over our respective borders into human space, a world they had recently colonized. They had named Respite. We only realized the damage we had done when a human delegation was sent to our respective core worlds, and an invitation was extended to both combatants to meet at peace talks on Earth. To be quite frank, neither the Ara or Graph desired peace, but we humoured the humans in order to wash away the incident our fighting had caused. We would placate them and assure them that it would never happen again, then go about our merry way trying to annihilate the other. We would quickly see how foolish we had been to believe that was a possibility. Both delegations were welcomed with the typical pomp and circumstance allotted for any attempts from a foreign nation to settle a dispute. Both belligerents seated apart, with the peaceful delegation strategically placed between them at all times. Weapons were forbidden for obvious reasons, but what struck us and the Graph delegation as odd was the location. Instead of a major city such as New York, or a centre of government such as Berlin, they had decided on a population centre of less than 50,000, named Waragem. If that wasn't enough of a deviation, they also announced that all parties would be expected to be ready before their local star had even broke the horizon at 0700 local time. We were there to humour the humans, so we took it in stride. After all, many species had tried and failed. What could the humans do that others had not already tried? As requested, everyone was awake and dressed in their ceremonial best before dawn, and both us and the Graph were surprised to find a human military detachment waiting for us, armed with ancient gas and piston-operated rifles. A Graph general was the first to raise a complaint, but the human delegation assured us that the weapons were ceremonial and showed us that they were loaded with blanks. Then they bid us to walk with them in the foggy pre-dawn air so that they could hear both sides of our war and what it was over. Assured we wouldn't have far to walk, we ventured out onto the streets of the small town and began to discuss the reason for the war, still thinking to ourselves that we were humouring the humans. The journey and discussion ended at a stone gate that was lined with trees barely visible in the darkness and fog, but we could hear human music coming from within. "Honoured guests," our human hosts began, "welcome to the opening ceremony of the Waragem Peace Talks." The park was simple yet immaculate, even in the mist and shadows. The farther we ventured down the lane past the gate, the closer and clearer the haunting music became. The music was called a ballad, and it was sad and sweet. The first verse was lost in the dew and gloom, but I remember hearing the last part of the refrain clearly. Did the band play the last post and chorus? Did the pipes play the flowers of the forest? I can remember looking over at the human delegation hoping for an answer, and seeing the free eyes of a Graph also blinking confusion. Did you leave a wife or a sweetheart behind, in some faithful heart? Is your memory enshrined? Although you died in 1916, in some faithful heart are you forever 19? Or are you a stranger without even a name, enclosed in forever behind a glass frame? In an odd photograph torn battered and stained, and faded to yellow in a brown leather frame. As the refrain repeated, it slowly dawned upon Ara and Grap alike. The humans were openly weeping, not even trying to hold back their tears in a show of stoicism. A crass display, to be certain, but one that no one dared to call out. It became all too clear as their star rose over the horizon and lit our understanding of what they were showing us. The sun now, it shines on these green fields of France. There's a warm summer breeze that makes the red poppies dance. And look how the sun shines from under the clouds. There's no gas, no barbed wire, no guns firing now. In the new light of day, we realized where we were. A small intricate stone arch stood watch over hundreds of gravestones. But here in this graveyard is still a no man's land. The countless white crosses stand mute in the sand, to man's blind indifference to his fellow man, and a whole generation that were butchered and damned. This was no opening ceremony. Did they beat the drums slowly? Did they play the fife lowly? Did they play the death march as they lowered you down? It was a warning and a promise. Humanity had almost destroyed themselves in conflicts, as the music had made plain. How much havoc would they wreak on us? Did the band play the last post and chorus? Did the pipes play the flowers of the forest? We had involved humanity in our petty conflict, and they were going to end it one way or the other. As if to hammer in the point, the last verse was sung. Ah, young Willie McBride, I can't help wonder why. Do those that lie here know why did they die? And did they believe when they answered the cause? Did they really believe that this war would end wars? Well, the sorrow, suffering, the glory, the pain, the killing, the dying were all done in vain. Horror hit both Grap and Ara simultaneously. For young Willie McBride, it all happened again, and again, and again, and again, and again. We had been invited into the tragedy of a species who knew death and despair on a deep and personal level, who had strived to be better, and always slipped back into their atrocities. We would learn from their mistakes or suffer their fate alongside them. After the Treaty of Warragen was signed, I decided to look into the war that was mentioned in that heart-wrenching song. 8.5 million of their soldiers and 6 million of their civilians had died by the time peace was finally established on the 11th day of their 11th month in the year 1918. 20 years, 9 months and 21 days, their Second World War would begin. The same amount of time the Ara and Graf had been at war.